Currently, wars are frequently breaking out all over the world. It seems we've entered an era where it's no longer strange for a war to start at any time. So if a war were to break out, what should we do? Today, let's take a proper look at this topic. Actually, in a video from a year ago, I introduced signs that can help us predict war in advance. For example, I mentioned that you just need to watch for things like the evacuation of the US Embassy or the withdrawal of citizens by various countries. These situations have often occurred in recent Middle Eastern wars and other conflicts. Therefore, it's most important to detect signs of war in advance. So if a war breaks out, how should we respond? The very first thing you should do is prepare a survival bag. Many people likely won't prepare a survival bag because disasters aren't happening now, and it's hard to find time with busy lives. However, even the government recommends having a survival bag. A survival bag is meant to help you survive for 72 hours. You only need to prepare up to about 20 kilograms. The thing you need most in a survival bag is, of course, water. When it comes to food, it depends on the person, but most people can survive for at least a few days without eating. If you go 3 days without water, you can die. That's why your survival bag needs drinking water. According to the 2005 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey by the Korean government, adult men drank about 1,013 ml of water in summer and 877 ml in winter. Since adults lose about 2.5 liters of water per day through sweat and excretion, it can be seen that adult men at the time of the 2005 survey consumed an average of about 1.5 liters of water through food. Therefore, the amount of drinking water needed for one adult for 3 days is about 6 to 7.5 liters. Of course, water is very heavy. Carrying around 7.5 liters would be very heavy. Therefore, it is wise to always keep a sufficient amount of water stored at home. If that's not possible, it may be a smart choice to fill places like sinks or bathtubs with water in advance in case of war. And when storing water, you shouldn't put it all in a large 2-liter water bottle, but rather divide it into smaller 500 ml bottles. The reason for this is that large 2-liter water bottles are bulky, and when you put them in a bag, it's hard to balance the weight. Most importantly, if a large 2-liter water bottle gets damaged, you basically lose 2 liters of drinking water in an instant. So if you need to prepare water, it's much better to have several 500 ml bottles, and you also need to prepare food. The best option is to secure canned foods that contain a lot of moisture or liquid, like canned peaches or canned corn. If you have canned food that contains water like this, it also solves the drinking water problem, so it's very convenient to use. Other than that, it's best to have emergency food supplies that are sold specifically for disaster preparedness. If that's not possible, keep ready-to-eat foods like pouch meals, 3-minute curry, instant beef bone soup, or other quick instant meals on hand. If you prepare dried foods like hardtack, crackers, jerky, or foods that have been sterilized for long-term storage, or high-calorie foods like chocolate bars, jam, or Nutella, you can last a long time. The most important thing is to buy foods with a long shelf life. If you buy food and the expiration date is only a few days away, that would be a big problem, right? Packing your survival backpack with long-lasting preserved foods, especially those with over 10-year shelf life, ensures you won't have to worry about starving. And many people think that they should pack ramen in case of war, but in situations like war or disasters, ramen is actually a very bad choice. Of course, it's convenient to eat during normal times, but first of all, ramen requires fire to cook. Those with military experience know making a fire can easily reveal your location. Blackout regulations exist for this reason. Fires at night are visible from far away, so avoid using fire whenever possible. On top of that, ramen also requires water, and ramen itself is packed with sodium, so eating it makes you thirsty. That means ramen is a food that consumes a lot of water, so actually bringing ramen is a disadvantage. Of course, the government isn't foolish, so if a war breaks out, they'll probably switch to a rationing system within a few days. There's a high chance that food and water will be distributed through rations. Instead of planning to survive for years, prepare your survival bag for just a few days. Most importantly, include a tourniquet and first aid supplies. Many people die in war due to severe bleeding. Having a tourniquet greatly improves survival odds. It's important to know how to use one correctly. You should have enough tourniquets for yourself and everyone you're with. Also, tourniquets are good because they can be used repeatedly. Bring any regular medication you take. Also, pack items to prevent infection, such as gauze, bandages, and medical tape. Consider packing ointments like Fusidine or Maticasol. Also, after preparing a survival bag, many people develop a false sense of security. The real danger isn't lacking supplies, it's others discovering you have them. In war and under martial law, the military and police will try to control the situation. In reality, it's difficult to manage every area perfectly, especially in big cities or densely populated apartment areas. Chaos can spread quickly. Supermarkets will be emptied and convenience stores may stop getting supplies. People will then become more sensitive and fixated on even minor information. If people learn a house has lots of water or someone has emergency food, the mood can shift instantly. Even people who seemed normal before can show a completely different side of themselves in extreme situations. In actual conflict zones, there have been many cases where houses with food and medicine became targets. When people are hungry and scared, they lose rationality, so hiding your survival supplies is as important as preparing them. On the internet, people who carry survival bags openly like this are even called walking loot drops. It means that as soon as rumors spread that you have valuable resources, all eyes around you will be on you. Posting pictures of your survival bag online or telling friends you're fully prepared can be dangerous. In wartime, even one word can reveal your location and make you a target. Only share these preparations with people you truly trust, ideally just your family or close members who will move with you. And instead of keeping all your supplies in one place, it's much safer to store them in different locations. In a war situation, staying unnoticed can increase your chances of survival more than having fancy equipment. Drones have become one of the most advanced and terrifying weapons in recent wars. Previously, war conjured images of fighter jets or tanks. Now we live in an era where a single small drone worth several $1,000s can strike fear into people. In the Ukraine war, footage frequently shows drones tracking and attacking targets even in trenches. In the Middle East, suicide drone attacks are rising, threatening both military and nearby civilian areas. If war erupts on the Korean peninsula, experts say South Korea will struggle to avoid drone threats. Drones are also louder than expected, with their buzzing motors audible from far away. In wartime, as soon as you hear this sound, be alert right away. Looking around outside for the drone is the most dangerous action. If you look up at the sky trying to spot the drone, you actually increase your chances of being exposed. So if you hear the sound of a drone, the first thing you should do is take cover immediately. You need to get inside a building, underground space, or concrete structure as quickly as possible. Especially in places like the middle of a road or an open area with no cover around, it can be extremely dangerous. And just because you went inside a building doesn't mean you can let your guard down. What's really important here is the windows. Many people approach the windows after hiding inside to check what's happening outside. However, this action can be quite dangerous. Even if a suicide drone explodes outside the building, the shockwave can shatter the windows. The broken glass fragments can fly into the room at tremendous speed. In actual explosion accidents, glass fragments often cause fatal injuries. The same principle applies not only to drone attacks, but also in bombing situations. More people are hurt by broken window fragments than by the explosion itself. So, if you're indoors, move as far from windows as you can. If possible, stay near concrete structures like corridors or pillars, which are safer. At night, reduce lighting as much as you can. Some drones use thermal imaging or cameras. In modern warfare, fear often comes quickly, especially during blackouts and communication outages. Many people picture gunfire or explosions when thinking of war, but civilians usually first notice power outages and their cell phones not working. South Korea is highly dependent on electricity and the internet. People use apps for deliveries, pay with cell phones, and rely on navigation systems for directions. If war breaks out, these systems could be paralyzed instantly. Infrastructure like power plants, substations, and communication base stations are especially likely to be targeted early. In modern warfare, attacks often target the enemy's power grid and communication networks first. When electricity fails, refrigerators stop and the internet becomes unstable. At night, the entire city could turn into darkness, and at that moment, people's anxiety grows beyond imagination. The bigger problem is mobile phones. Many people think that as long as they have their phones, they'll be fine. If the power to the base stations is cut off or the communication network is overloaded, both phone calls and the internet can go down at the same time. In actual disaster situations, there have already been several cases where communication in certain areas was paralyzed. In a war situation, the scale could be much bigger. Kakao Talk won't work either. Text messages will be delayed. There could be situations where you can't even contact your family. That's why it's important to prepare a portable charger in advance. What's important is that even backup batteries eventually run out. Using your phone for things like YouTube or games will drain the battery faster than expected. Therefore, in a war situation, it's important to keep your phone in power-saving mode as much as possible. Lower the brightness and close all unnecessary apps. Also, since there's a high chance the internet won't work, it's important to decide on a meeting point in advance. And in this kind of situation, a crucial piece of equipment is a crank radio. Since it generates electricity by hand, you can access information even during a blackout. In war, information can mean survival. Because you need to know where is dangerous, where the shelters are, and whether there are additional attacks. If you have this kind of information, you'll be able to hold out to some extent. The most important thing is that you need the will to survive in order to endure. Never lose hope.